there is a thing in improv called yes and. And you know what I'm talking about, I think. So if in improv, that's things like SNL or whatever, where people are doing a skit. If you're improving something and someone says, "What about this?" and you go, "No," that ends it. You just killed the energy, right? So, um, but you're doing that with yourself, right? If you're like, "Oh, what about it?" No, that's the end. You're not going to do anything from that, right?
Daniel Reifsnyder, songwriter, actor, musician. How are you doing?
I'm
Well,
doing good. How are you?
I'm great. I'm so glad you're here.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
That's awesome. So, I learned, oh, actually, before I've got to show you my mug because fellow Dixonians here got
Oh,
the
that's very
Railroad
cool.
Museum mug today. So I brought that on since I was like, hey, fellow Dixonians on.
That makes it sound like Dickensian, but it's not as fancy as Dickensian.
I like, we'll take whatever. But I learned something new about you yesterday that I had not.
Oh,
So you were in a stage production with Nathan Lane.
yes,
What? What was that like? So for people who don't know, you were a child actor, and
yes.
we're going to kind of get into that here in a second. So tell me about what you did with Nathan.
So Nathan Lane, for most people, I think would probably know him from The Lion King. I think was he Timon? I think he was Timon in The Lion King.
Oh,
I feel
maybe.
like,
Yeah.
hmm?
Maybe, maybe.
I, yeah. So I think that's probably where most people know him from. But he was very, very. And Only Murders in the Building, which is a fantastic show.
And the
Um,
birdcage.
and The Birdcage.
Yes,
Yes, yes, yes.
birdcage.
Yes. But yeah, very, very well known theater actor as well. I was the understudy for the kid. There was a kid in the play. It's an old play. I feel like the play might have been from the 30s. And it was about this old man who tricks death into getting trapped in a tree in his yard. Um, and like basically is able to stop everybody from dying. And the role was his grandson, and I was the understudy for the grandson. And I never got to go on, but it was very cool to watch him work. Nathan Lane played Death.
Oh, wow. I can picture that.
Yeah. And George C. Scott from Inherit the Wind played the old man that tricks Death. But yeah, that was a lot of fun. And that was at Circle in the Square Theater in New York. And it was a very neat theater, very kind of a small theater. Um, but yeah, I had a lot of fun.
Well, what got you into child acting? But as a child, I mean, because
I
when
still act like a child, damn it.
I guess the question is, as a child, I mean, was that something that you wanted to do? Was it something your
Yes.
parents got you excited about?
No, they did not. They did not want me into it. Yes, I was very vocal about it. So um, the story is back in uh, Philly. There was a local show. I feel like it might have been the tri-state area, like New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania. Um, and it was a variety show. So it was probably one of the last variety shows that existed. Basically, the guy that ran the show, it was called Al Albert Showcase, and he was one of the original Four Aces, which was like a singing band from like the 50s, I want to say, maybe even the 40s. Um, and he would have guests on, and they would sing, they would dance, they would do magic, that sort of thing, right? And then there was a segment of just kids, and they would kind of sit in it like a little dais, and they would tell jokes. And he would like go around to each kid and was like, "Oh, I hear you have a joke today," and then all that stuff. And then sometimes the kids would also sing and dance and all that stuff. So I was 3, And I kept insisting that I wanted to do that. I wanted to be on TV. I wanted to be on that show. And my parents, who were not, no, they weren't musical, they weren't artistic. My mom was actually a women's softball player. And she was just like, no, this is no. She's like, I don't know anything about this. We're not doing this.
What are you doing?
But I would not shut up about it. And so they finally said, look, if you can prove that you're serious, if you can prove that you're responsible, you can do it. So why don't you take piano lessons? If you take piano lessons for like a year and you're really good and you take, blah, 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 then we'll let you audition for the show. So then I wouldn't shut up about piano lessons. So they finally let me take piano lessons, and I took piano lessons with, she was a very sweet lady, very patient. She was probably in her 90s, and I think she was like the church organist. And she was very sweet. And I took lessons with her for about a year, and I was very serious. I practiced, and then finally I was like, okay, after about a year, it's time.
We're auditioning.
We're auditioning. So pretty much. So I want to say I was 5. I think I was 5. And they were holding auditions at a local mall, which is malls. Kids were a thing that
were the best. Okay, listen.
They used to have shows in malls. Yeah. But anyway, so it was like an open audition for anybody that wanted to come in. And I thought I was going to go there and play piano. That was not the thing. They didn't have a piano. So they said, well, just audition. And I was like, all right. They're like, sing something. So I sang like some kindergarten song. And I got in, and I was a regular on the show. And my thing, because I was super into dinosaurs, I could tell you everything about every dinosaur that existed at the time. My thing was dinosaur jokes. So I would just tell all these, dinosaur jokes.
You got one now?
I'm sorry, what?
You got one now for us?
Oh, geez.
I want to hear a dinosaur joke.
Okay. So where was the dinosaur when the lights went out?
Oh, man. I don't know.
In the dark. I mean, it's a kid's joke, right? So
it's great. It's great. No.
Yeah. So it was all stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then I sang and performed and did jokes on the Al Albert Showcase for a couple of years. I want to say till I was like maybe 8. And at the time, I still took music lessons. I took singing lessons, piano lessons, some dance lessons too, because dancing could be a thing, and then a friend of mine was also on the show, and she had just gotten into, I think she had just started auditioning in New York. This is all in Philly at the time, and she convinced my mom, said, why don't you take him to New York, to audition, get him an agent, and just see what happens.
Had you been there? So, as a kid, had you been to New York City?
No. And so we went to New York. We auditioned. We got I got an agent, and I started. It's a very it's not a linear process, and anybody that's in the arts probably feels the same thing. You're going to get a lot of rejections. I didn't book for a while. I think I ended up getting like a demo for something. I think my first thing that I got was a demo for a Fisher Price aquarium, and it was like a huge, I was like, oh my God.
Well, do you feel like piano is kind of really a very common entry point into the arts, especially for a lot of children, for a lot of people? It seems like so many of us, even if we didn't continue with that later on, we had piano lessons as a child. Like I took piano, and unfortunately I didn't do much with it, and I kind of stopped, and my son takes piano, and I think it's a great entryway into artistic things.
I agree. And the advice that I was given as a kid, and that I've ever heard from any teacher or any like music store, is start with the piano. Usually kids will start with piano, or people will start with piano or guitar. To me, Piano is easier, and piano is obviously my first instrument, but all of the music theory, everything that you learn is on the piano. If you're playing piano, you're playing two clefs. You have to learn the treble clef and the bass clef. A lot of instruments, if not the majority of instruments, are either treble clef or bass clef. So if you play piano, you can read them both. And that means you can play bass, you can play guitar, you can probably play flute. Um, Anything that is treble or bass, you can read and figure out. Um, and I mean, like the music theory from like, which is not changed in, 600 years, is all based on piano. So, when they're talking about things like half steps and whole steps and sharps and flats, it makes sense to look at a flat surface like the keyboard and the black keys and be like, oh, that's what they're talking about. It's a little harder to see on a guitar, on like a guitar fret for me. And when you have something like, a wind instrument, it's really hard to kind of picture in your head, in my opinion. But it's a bit more visual, a visual help in that sense, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's what I told my son, not in that detail, because half of what you just said, but I told him, I said, this is a great way, we start off with this. And once you get a solid foundation in this, then we can move on to guitar and other instruments that he's interested in.
Absolutely.
But when you went to New York for the first time as a kid, I mean, what was that experience like for you? Just soaking it all in, taking all of that in, and what kind of impact did those experiences that you had, auditions and getting roles and learning sort of that side of things, what impact did that have on the artist and the creative that you've become?
So that's a great question. You get a lot of rejections, right? So in your case, you probably get like rejection letters or emails or whatever, or nothing. As I would often get nothing. I would go to an audition, and you would either hear back, and if you heard back, it was, we'd like to have a call back with you, or you booked it, or you heard nothing. And it was always very interesting and a little bit of a roller coaster experience to go from something that you're putting a lot of your time and energy into. And for some of these scripts, I would work with my acting coach, and I really try to get into the script. And you think you nailed it, you killed it, you walk out of the audition, and then you just don't hear anything, and you're just like, oh, okay, well, whatever, okay, on to the next thing. And then in some cases, like I've walked into an audition and thought I completely bombed it, and I got it, and it showed me a couple things. First of all, it showed me it taught me resiliency in the arts, because this is a very, very tough industry, anything arts wide. One of my friends referred to it as getting kicked in the nuts every day and having to say thank you.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah.
And it helped me to just kind of like let things go and be like, okay, you know what? I didn't get that. Really wanted that part. That's okay. I'm going to move on to the next project. And it also taught me that we're not always good judges of our own art. And sometimes other people aren't very good judges of our art either. Right. So if I go up and I do a performance and I think it's terrible, and people come up and congratulate me, whose perspective is wrong, right? Are they wrong, or am I wrong, right? Or doesn't it matter?
Right. It's two different perspectives.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
From a casting director standpoint, because I've sat in that role many, many, many times. It's the same for like agents, and if they reject an author and things like that, it's never personal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very, very rarely would it ever be personal. It's never been personal for me. It's, casting directors know they have a very specific, idea of what they're looking for. And there's all these little pieces that have to fit just right. But it's so easy. We don't always, if you're going into an audition or you're sending out, a query or whatever you're doing, you don't think about that side, because now you're questioning, what did I do wrong? What I have done better? Oh man, you start questioning your entire existence.
Of course.
doing this. So it's interesting to see both sides and to understand that there's so many layers there.
Absolutely. And something that people that are just getting into the arts don't understand, and you kind of hit on it, is they don't realize everybody is doing a job, whether it's a book publisher, whether it's a casting agent. They're doing a different job than you. They're in a different part of the industry, but they don't necessarily get their jollies from rejecting you, right?
Right.
It's just, it's not right. I'm sorry, you're not a good fit. You've got red hair and we're looking for a blonde, whatever, right? And some of them are wonderful people, and it breaks their heart to be like, man, you did a wonderful read on this. It's just, it's not right for this. And that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I've had to turn down actors for a role because they were brilliant. I mean, they had such talent.
Yeah.
But someone came into that casting room and portrayed that character to a T, exactly what we were looking for. And you had to go with that person because they had everything, and then you had to say no to the more seasoned actor who had a lot more parts under his belt, who had not been used to being told no. This was somebody that rejections often, that had done larger work. So yeah, it's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard.
No, you were a casting director. When did you do that?
In theater. Yeah. So director, but also casting director. I've worked I always tell people the only department I have not worked in theater is lighting and sound. And you don't want me working in lighting and sound. I can't even get the lighting right for my own show. So
I think everybody should do theater or do the arts in some capacity, because it teaches you to be flexible. It teaches you to improvise, right? Somebody forgets their line, and you've all of a sudden you've got to come up on the fly with, okay, well, how do we get back to that? How do we get to that spot? This other actor forgot their line, or the lights don't come up right, or the set doesn't change.
Disappears.
Yes.
Oh, that's
exactly.
No.
The
stage manager and the prop master will kill you.
There's plenty of times when the prop isn't in the right place, and it's
Yes. Yeah. Or if an actor goes missing, that's a whole other thing. Then the director just loses her cool, and then
of course,
or
understandable.
No. But so how can we introduce children to the arts? What are some good ways that we can do that, besides just piano and things like that? Encourage children, or also how can we encourage adults to encourage young people? If the arts is something that they have a natural inclination to, or they're curious about, because that's part of it too. I think sometimes we're afraid to let them go in that direction for various reasons.
Because they won't make any money.
Yeah. I feel like we could do so much more if we had the right support.
Yes.
And encouragement. So what can we do to help young people pursue the arts and really allow them to flourish in their natural talents and abilities?
It's a great question. So as a culture, I don't feel like we emphasize art enough. I mean, we sort of do, right? If somebody becomes like, a Lady Gaga or a Katy Perry, or they become a great actor, then we're fans, right? But we're not encouraging the nascent little cells that create that, right? We're more interested in making money, understandably, paying the mortgage, sports, right? Which is all good, all well and good. But if we need to decide that art has value, right? And that comes with paying artists what they're worth, right? And you've probably experienced this. I know a lot of actors, comedians, musicians that experience this. Well, you love it. Shouldn't you be doing it for free? Right? Or can you do it for exposure? Or can you do it for, right? And so, well, you don't tell a cardiologist, man, I know you're just starting out. You just graduated with your doctorate. Um, I have this guy. His REs are really clogged, but you know what? You clean him up, you'll get exposure. He'll tell everybody about you. Like,
Right. Right.
it doesn't work like that, right? So culturally, we need to have a shift. I don't know how that happens, but um, public schools, which are notoriously underfunded and you know, put upon and stressed out teachers and all that stuff, we need to encourage music in public schools because that's often the first thing that gets cut. Or if not, like band program, art program, right? Or other things, right? So I mean, we don't really have you know, like wood shop anymore, you know, and that's something that's art. You know, if you're a kid that can't make, you know, that can't make a sound on an instrument and you don't want to act, make birdhouses, find something cool that you can do, make pottery, find something that excites you, right? Because it builds confidence, it builds creativity, it builds putting yourself out there in a unique way, right? This is something that I made, right? And I don't know if there's anything other than art that lets you express yourself and share it, right?
You're sharing a piece of yourself. When you share your
Exactly.
art with the world, it's a form of communication.
Absolutely. And it is a psychological safety valve, right? So, you know, there's probably and I'm not a shrink, but there's probably some kids that, you know, if they get a release into expressing themselves in a productive way, they're not going to do something else that they shouldn't do, right? Or they're not going to do something that damages society, right? Um, so all of that, you know, I would love to see more art funding. Um, as a parent, as like in a home situation, um, lessons are wonderful, and I know they can be expensive. But even if you just get your kid an instrument and let them fool around with the instrument, right? Even if you can't afford lessons, you know, find something on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace and just be like, hey, here's a keyboard, have fun with it.
And YouTube has a
YouTube
great
has some resources. Yes.
that, you know, if a parent cannot afford to pay an
Yep.
instructor, start there.
Yeah. And YouTube is a really good resource. Um, the bad thing about YouTube is they don't really differentiate between what is good information and what is bad information in terms of instrument. And I've had kids that, you know, try to learn themselves on YouTube and they come to me and I'm like, what are you doing? That's not,
What is
I
this?
mean, your fingering is all messed up, right? So I mean, there's a caveat there with YouTube,
Right.
but there are definitely things. And the other thing also, and this is just on the completely other end of the spectrum, you are not too old to learn an instrument. You're not too old to learn anything. I teach probably what people would consider a surprising number of adult students. You know, I've taught people that are, you know, retired. I've taught people in their 70s. I've taught people, you know, our age. Okay.
Hey
And
now, hold on.
hey, now, I'm not saying you're in your
I
70s,
know, I know.
um, but every one of them has come to me and said, I hope I'm not too old, you know, or I'm probably your oldest student. Or, you know, I know it seems silly that I'm wanting to take piano at, you know, age 40, and you know, I try to tell them, no, it's okay, you know, not everybody had the opportunity to learn as a kid, and it's great. I don't know that as a society we specifically stigmatize older learners, at least not that I've noted overtly, but there is sort of this undercurrent of, you know, now that I've got a job, a real job, and I'm, you know, over 18, I should be doing something serious in air quotes, right?
Yeah.
Um, and, you know, that goes back to as a society, art is serious, right? What would happen if there was no art? What if we woke up tomorrow and there was no podcast, there was no music, there was no TV, there was no movies? We would be like,
Story idea right there.
yeah, right.
Somebody needs to do something with that.
Well, there you go. You're the one.
I think about that though, that
Yeah.
when you said that, I immediately got this sense of anxiety. Like that would be a horrible place to live.
Yep.
A horrible place to live. And you're touching on something I wanted to go into with because it doesn't matter if you're 2 or if you're 90.
Mm-hmm.
It's never too late. And I think we don't encourage that later on. Oh, you're past your prime. Oh, you've lived this long, it's too late now. But it's not too late. If you have a dream or a passion, if you have something that you've always wanted to do, maybe you're 60 years old and you never have the opportunity, or you had opportunities and you let them go by.
That's right.
That's okay. Start now and encourage the person next to you, because, we're watching each other. And so we're inspiring each other all day long. And then
absolutely.
So yeah, I think I would love to see ways that we can encourage young people more and give them that support to say it's okay to pursue this. But then on that flip side, let's encourage older people of any age, any spectrum. Like let's encourage each other to go and try the things. Even if you think you're bad at it, you might take a canvas out with some paint and paint a picture. It's a great outlet, and you might learn that you hate painting, and you might learn that you love it. And there's just so much to explore, but we, for whatever reason, we kind of discourage ourselves. And I think sometimes each other.
We do. And that's a really good point. There is bravery in art, because not only are you putting yourself out there, you are giving yourself, and you need to, before you do anything, you need to give yourself permission to suck. Right?
That saying, be brave enough to suck at something new.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
I love that saying. I love it. Yeah.
Right. And you're right. Sometimes someone will, discourage other people, like, well, I wouldn't want to suck. I wouldn't want them to be terrible. I don't want them to get hurt. So what? Just don't do it. Do something that you know that you're good at, right? But there is even something that, as we get older and, our brains mature, learning every day, doing something new every day keeps your mind young, right? And, can help stave off things like dementia and Alzheimer's and all those very scary things that happen. If you look at a lot of the people that are sharp as they get older, they're still doing stuff. They're reading books. They're doing puzzles. They're doing things that are keeping those neurons firing. And I think that's also very important.
Yeah, definitely. So what is some advice that you could give, or some encouragement, or even some things that you have experienced that you think could help people of all ages be less afraid of pursuing their creative side and artistic things, or, just to take that leap and to go for it? That was a big question.
That's a big question.
Pressure on answering that one.
No, so it goes back to not being afraid to suck at something, right? And what people don't understand, because a lot of people have and I don't mean it in a negative way in the way I'm going to use it, they have a self-centered viewpoint, right? So I suck. That's my problem. But if you take it and you pan out, you zoom out, everybody was terrible when they started out. There isn't anybody that has done anything that wasn't terrible the first time they did it. Like if you look at somebody that wrote great songs, right? I'm sure Bob Dylan's first songs were not very good, right? I mean, maybe not. I don't know. I haven't heard them.
Love Bob.
Yes, but don't try to compare yourself to the final product, because you're not in that same place, right? You're comparing a seedling to a 200-year-old tree. You can't do that, right? So just give yourself permission. And one of the ways that I like to do things, and this is just in a creative way, when I'm writing, is I kind of look at it like a runway. All right. So I'm just throwing out ideas. Maybe they work, maybe they don't. I'm playing notes on the piano. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but it kind of gets me there. Right. And philosophically, there is, I love improv. There is a thing in improv called yes and. And you know what I'm talking about, I think. So if in improv, that's things like SNL or whatever, where people are doing a skit. If you're improving something and someone says, "What about this?" and you go, "No," that ends it. You just killed the energy, right? So, but you're doing that with yourself, right? If you're like, "Oh, what about it?" No, that's the end. You're not going to do anything from that, right? But instead of saying no, go, "Well, but what about this? That might not be it, but let's try this." Or yes, and, right? "Oh, that's good, but let's also add this." And I think if you open your mind in that way, it gives you the ability to keep going. And don't judge yourself, especially that early. And in every artist, and frankly, probably every person, there's two people. And I'm borrowing heavily from The Artist's Way by I think it's Julia Cameron. There's two people. There's the kid that likes to finger paint, and there's the critic, and that's in everybody's head, right? We need them both. You need the critic to kind of like filter your art and be like, okay, so that is maybe something for you that you just don't share because it's not great, right? This is a masterpiece and you should put this out there, right? So we need the critic for that to an extent. But the critic doesn't need to be in the room when the kid is finger painting, right? Because the kid will never finger paint, right?
Right. That's a similar
So
concept in writing
yeah,
to when you're writing, just write, just get the words
yes,
out. Don't think.
yes,
But then when you're done, when you've got it all out and the story is all on paper, now put your editor hat on and now go through and be merciless, cut out
exactly.
everything that doesn't need to be in there. But you have to separate the two. You can't write with your editor hat, which I fall into that all the time. I'm like,
Yep.
my editor hat is on. You read this sentence 20 times and you're just in the rough draft or the first draft stage. You need to keep moving. But yeah,
That's right.
don't keep
That's
them
exactly right.
new. That's a great piece of advice.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I like that. So, and I love that as a teacher, you told me that you teach children as young as 2,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah,
that's wonderful. And then to all ages, do you teach adults as well,
of
or?
course. Yeah. I've taught people, like I said, retired in their 70s. I don't put age restrictions on who I teach because of how I was taught, right? So I started at 3. There's not a whole lot of people that would be open to taking a 3-year-old kid, at least not back then in the 80s, right?
Well, it's hard to find now. Most
Yeah,
lessons start at minimum 5 or 6 years old, and even
that's what
it'd be hard to find someone.
a lot of people will a lot of teachers will say, well, bring them back when they're in 3rd grade, or there's a whatever. And that depends on the teacher. Sometimes teachers just don't want to deal with, they don't like the little itty bitties. But my philosophy is it depends more on the kid than the age, right? So I was a very unusual kid. I was very serious. I showed up in my lessons. I practiced. You're not going to find that all the time, right? But I've taught 2.5-year-olds that are like, I'm going to do this. I want to do this, right? I've taught 8-year-olds that are all over the place, right? It's not an age thing as much as it's an individual thing. And when they're really little, like maybe pre-reading, it's more about the enjoyment of the instrument and appreciation of the art And okay, so this is middle C on the piano, and why don't you play me a song? Be creative, play something on the piano. Oh, that's wonderful. And what about this? Then it is about reading the notes and playing Mozart, right, or Elton John or whatever, right? And when they get older, you can kind of feed them into that direction.
Right.
But if you don't enjoy what you're doing, and this is something that a lot of teachers don't get, and a lot of parents don't get, because on the flip side of what you're talking about, there are parents that my kid's going to learn piano and that's all there is to it. I don't care if they hate it. They're showing up to the right, which I understand because that teaches discipline, right? But you're going to make that kid hate that instrument, right?
Yeah.
Eventually.
Sure. It should be something that you have anxiety over, when you go to play it.
Right. And my goal when I'm teaching is to have it be fun, not have it be an anxiety thing, have it be, a fun, creative thing. Because if they're not enjoying what they're doing, they're not going to do it. And to an extent, that's even true of adults, right? If you don't want to go to the gym because you hate it, you're probably not going to go to the gym, right? Unless you find some way to make it appealing to you, whether, oh, I go to the gym and then I get pizza or whatever, which ruins going to the gym. But you see what I'm saying? There's you have to make it incentivized, fun, interesting, and not quite so dry.
And I'm sure they pick up on some of that from us as well, as they watch us, grumble about things or do things begrudgingly. We don't want to do it, instead of, yeah. So there's probably a little of that we could help with, and
For sure.
just can maybe show them how to be excited about something, or just to explore something and appreciate it first, and not make it such a chore. So
That's right.
well, do you have any projects going on? You've got anything coming up that
Oh, good question.
we'll find
So
out?
I blog fairly regularly. I do a bunch of things. I as an artist, I have to do a lot of things to kind of keep paying the mortgage. I'm a songwriter. I write songs. I write with a lot of artists. I don't think I have any projects right this second on that end. I teach, obviously. I teach pretty regularly, like Monday through Saturday. I guess that's a project. I guess that's an ongoing project. I'm also kind of just writing and recording and doing my own stuff. But I would say the project that is probably out is some of the blogging that I do. I do a lot of blogging for Flypaper. And that is mostly like music business blogs. Some of it is like cool and interesting, like music history. Like I just did one on Otis Blackwell, who was the guy that wrote a lot of Elvis's songs, but you don't really hear about him because racism in the 50s and blah blah blah. So I didn't mean to yada yada that, but there's a whole story, and you can read the article.
Absolutely.
But he wrote, I want to say he wrote Heartbreak Hotel. I can't remember now off the top of my head, but it's in the article. If you Google me, you will find probably a ton of articles. I have my own website called songsmithing.net, which a lot of my stuff is up there. But much like the cobbler's kids don't have any shoes, I haven't updated that website in a little bit, but you can find some links and stuff on there. And of course, people can find me on social media. I'm just Dan Reifsnyder on Facebook and Insta. So
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you for coming on the show.
well, thank you for having me. It was fun.
I feel like we only breached the surface about some of this,
Yeah.
that we could definitely have more conversations about this. There's a lot of important things to kind of delve into.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. All right. We'll go and get your nap in before you teach all these people today. I'm gonna finish my coffee and then take a nap, because that sounds
Okay. Isn't that counterproductive?
maybe. I don't know. I'm one of those people that could drink a pot of coffee and then go right to bed.
Yeah, caffeine didn't it never affected me either. I used to drink like a gallon of tea as a kid, and I just wouldn't matter. It was funny because in college, my contemporaries would be drinking coffee, and they'd be like, don't you drink coffee? I'm like, not really. It doesn't do anything for me. It doesn't really keep me up. I do. I have to. I'll put it this way. I do have to drink a lot. A barista was, I'm sure, being very nice, and gave me a triple that I did not ask for.
Oh no.
And I was flying. I was talking at 50 times my normal speed. And like my heart was racing, and I didn't know why. I didn't realize it until afterwards.
Feeling you're just like, what's happening around me?
Yeah. So I will say that it does affect me in high doses.
All right. Well, we all know if we want to have fun and Daniel's at the party, all right, we're going to throw in a quadruple shot.
There you go.
All right. Well, thank you again. Love to have you on again sometime.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and I'll chat with you soon.
Okay.